The topic is Ramanuja Chatushloki. Anisham bhajatam bhajam.
Anisham bhajatam bhajam.
Charanam boruha madarena pumsam.
Charanam boruha madarena pumsam.
Vitaran nibhritam vibhutimishtam.
Vitaran nibhritam vibhutimishtam.
Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam.
Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam.
Bhuvino vimatam stvadiya suktihi.
Bhuvino vimatam stvadiya suktihi.
Udishi bhuya kudrishtibhis sametan.
Udishi bhuya kudrishtibhis sametan.
Shakali kurute vipaschididya.
Shakali kurute vipaschididya.
Jaya Ramanuja Shesha Shaila Shringe.
Jaya Ramanuja Shesha Shaila Shringe.
Shrutishu Smritishu Pramana Tattvam.
Shrutishu Smritishu Pramana Tattvam.
Kripaya Lokya Vishuddhaya Hi Buddhya.
Kripaya Lokya Vishuddhaya Hi Buddhya.
Akrita Svatayeva Bhashya Ratnam.
Akrita Svatayeva Bhashya Ratnam.
Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam.
Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam.
Jaya Mayi Matandakara Bhano.
Jaya Mayi Matandakara Bhano.
Jaya Bahya Pramukata Vikrishano.
Jaya Bahya Pramukata Vikrishano.
Jaya Samshrita Sindhu Shita Bhano.
Jaya Samshrita Sindhu Shita Bhano.
Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe.
Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe.
Yo nityamachyuta padambuja yukmarukma vyamohatastaditarani trinaya mene asmadguroho bhagavatosya dayaika sindhoho ramanujasya charanau sharanam prapadye. Tasmai ramanujaryaya namas shrutismriti sutranam antarjvara masishamat punyambhoja vikashaya papadbhanta kshayaya cha shriman avirabhut bhumau ramanuja divakaraha. Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam. Jaya Ramanuja Seshashaila Shringe. Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam. Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe. Popularly celebrated as Ramanuja Chatushloki, this simple yet profound glorification of Jagadacharya Swami Ramanuja was composed by his disciple who is known as Anantarvan, Anantasuri, Anantacharya, Tirumalai Ananta. Ramanuja's disciples, amongst Ramanuja's disciples, each of his primary disciples were known for certain specific teachings or for certain commentaries or for certain lofty works. But there are also some of his disciples who are only known for their Acharya Nishtha. One such illustrious disciple is Anantarvan. When we think of Acharya Nishta, Acharya Prapatti, the first thing that comes to mind is the illustrious Alvar, Madhurakavi. He declares, Devu Mattariyen, I know no God, I know no supreme being, I only know my Acharya, Nammalvar. For me, nothing else matters. Such was his devotion and dedication to the lotus feet of Nammalvar, his Acharya. The illustrious Manavala Mamuni, when he was praying to Ramanuja, had only one ask. He could have asked many things. But he prays Ramanuja, asking him to bless him to attain the state of Vaduganambi, another disciple of Swami Ramanuja. He says, if only I get a similar state, if only I can become another Vaduganambi, then I have achieved the purpose of my life and living. And who is this Vaduganambi? Another disciple of Swami Ramanuja who used to be taking care of Prasada for Swami Ramanuja. And when everybody rushed out to take the darshana of Nemperumal and Srirangam, when he came on procession, seems Vaduganambi never used to leave the kitchen. And when questioned, when the Swami is on the streets, why are you inside? And Vaduganambi would answer, your Swami may be on the streets on a procession, but my Swami needs milk to be served anytime. I can't let it to be burnt. So such was his Acharya Nishta. Our Shastras celebrate this Nishta towards one's Acharya, which is anchoring oneself, anchoring one's faith, one's practice, one's very identity to the lotus feet of the Acharya. Acharya Nishta can be looked as the perfection of Sharanagati in practice. That is why this is considered as Charamopaya. The Shastras, Antimopaya, Charamopaya, the ultimate Upaya. Even Bhagavan's lotus feet is not celebrated as Antimopaya. Acharya's lotus feet is celebrated as Antimopaya. So we see several Mahacharyas who stood, who were the very embodiments of this Acharya Nishta, and one such Mahacharya is Anantarvan, Anantasuri. Some of us were fortunate enough to visit his birthplace recently, Kiranganur. It is in the Mandya district. On the way from Bangalore to Mysore, Kiranganur comes on the way. Anantacharya, Anantasuri was born in Kiranganur. And then later he moved on to Srirangam to become one of the illustrious disciples of Swami Ramanuja. Now, there are many things that we can discuss about Anantarvan, Anantacharya. Before we discuss his Chatushloki, we must relish the gunas of Anantarvan. Only then we can relish his composition, which is Ramanuja Chatushloki. Ramanuja Chatushloki, 4 shlokas, which celebrate the glories of Swami Ramanuja. But before we relish Ramanuja's glories through Chatushloki, let us relish briefly Anantarvan's glories. He is also celebrated as Thirumalai Anantarvan. because he moved from Srirangam to Tirumala and settled in Tirumala. Those of us, when we visit even today Tirumala, we must not fail to visit the Nandavana, the garden which was established by Anantalvan on Tirumala. Even today, the Pushpa Kainkarya to Srinivasa, to Venkatesa is done on behalf of Anantalvan. How many of you would have noticed the crowbar that hangs in the Dwara? As we enter, we can still see a crowbar, the iron rod that is hung even today. Before we enter the main sanctum sanctorum, we see the crowbar hanging. Again, another symbol that brings us the memories of the illustrious Anantalvan. How can we miss that camphor that is pasted on the chin of Srinivasa? Even today, that's a trademark. When we visualize Venkatesha, the beautiful, his enchanting face, we can never miss that camphor mark on his chin. Again, that should remind us of Anantalvan's glories. There was a time when Swami Ramanuja was having his Kalakshepa with his disciples, and he was doing Kalakshepa of Nammalvar's Thiruvaimozhi, where the Alvar was glorifying the hills of Thiruvenkata, and how the Alvar summarizes the summum bonum of life to be doing service to Bhagavan in Tirumala. And while discussing that segment of that text, Swami Ramanuja is concerned that we are now talking about more than 1,000 years back, when there were no roads, there were no pathways. The hills of Tirumala were not easily accessible to anyone. Very few even dared to climb up hills to go to the temple. So there were very few readily available to do Kainkarya to Bhagavan. So Ramanuja was expressing his deep concern that Bhagavan, who loves Pushpa Kainkarya, has no one to take care of doing this Kainkarya to him. And then he passingly remarks, if only one of you can venture traveling all the way to Tirumala and settling down there and undertaking the task of doing Pushpa Kainkarya, it would be a great blessing indeed. This passing remark of Swami Ramanuja catches the attention of Anantalvan. Then and there he stands up and makes a resolve. He assures Swami Ramanuja that he shall immediately move with his pregnant wife. Nobody knew at that time, the access was not clear, and it was very few people lived on Tirumala hills, and one of them being Ramanuja's own uncle, Periya Tirumalai Nambi, who used to be doing service to Venkatesha on the hills. Anantalvan took up the arduous task of moving and settling down on Tirumala, and then together with his pregnant wife, he moves to Tirumala. That is how he gets to be celebrated as Tirumalai Anantalvan. From Srirangam, he moves to Tirumala and settles down in Tirumala, and he begins his Pushpa Kainkarya. He constructs a very nice garden, cultivates different kinds of flowers, and his niyamana by his acharya is to every day collect fresh flowers, different types of fragrant flowers, and before the flowers could blossom, his task was to end up stringing the garlands, because the niyamana was the garlands have to be strung before the flowers could completely bloom. Only then the garlands can be properly strung. So that was the niyamana given by Ramanuja to Anantalvan. So Anantalvan settles in Tirumala and he begins his work. He starts his Kainkarya to Venkatesha. And then as he was building the Nandavana there every day, obviously he had to collect water in order to cultivate all the plants, and this work has been going on for days together. And his pregnant wife was also doing the Kainkarya of fetching water all the way from Akasha Ganga down to Tirumala so that the garden can be cultivated. And this was going on for several hours every day. Anantalvan together with his pregnant wife. Now Bhagavan, compassionate Srinivasa, could not bear the sight of Anantalvan's pregnant wife doing hard work, and therefore, assuming the form of a little boy, he approaches Anantalvan and he proposes, why don't I join you and work with you and help you do this Kainkarya? You are all alone here doing this task hours together through the day. Anantalvan says, my Acharya commanded me to do this Kainkarya by myself and my wife. I cannot share this with anyone. If you want, go take permission from my Acharya and come back. If he permits, you are ready to take part in this Kainkarya. He is very adamant not to allow this little boy. This little boy approaches him every day, and then Bhagavan now goes to Anantalvan's wife. Now, she obviously was pregnant and very tired. So one day, after refusing several days, she finally accedes, agrees, and asks the boy to carry the water. Now Anantalvan comes to know this. He is very furious. Immediately he starts chasing the boy, carrying this crowbar that we see hanging there right at the entrance. And the boy starts running, and the chase goes on. And this little boy runs and runs and runs, and finally he enters the sanctum sanctorum of the temple, and the doors close. Now, in the process of chasing, by accident, Anantalvan hit the little boy on his chin. And as he was running into the sanctum sanctorum, the boy was bleeding. There was blood oozing out from his chin. And then when everybody gathered there, after a while, the door opens and they could see blood oozing out from the chin of Venkatesha, the Moolamurti. Then everybody realized, including Anantalvan, that this little boy who was all the time trying to do Kainkarya, help him out, was none other than Venkatesha himself. And then Bhagavan, through the Archaka, conveys the only way to stop this blood oozing out of my chin is to bring the dust from the feet of Anantalvan and apply it on his chin. Bhagavan is asking for the dust of his bhakta in order for this oozing of the blood to be stopped. And that was when it was applied, the blood stopped. From then on, it became a practice to apply Karpura, camphor, to Srinivasa in memory of this glorious incident of Vatsalya of Bhagavan towards his bhakta. There was another occasion where Anantalvan was busy stringing the garland for that day's Pushpa Kainkarya. Bhagavan was waiting for Anantalvan to come to the Sannidhi. But then he was so busy stringing a beautiful garland made out of fresh flowers collected. Now, the garland has to be strung before the flowers could bloom. Then Bhagavan sends a message saying, hey Ananta, I'm keen to meet you, you're delaying our meeting today. So the summons come from Bhagavan himself. Venkatesha is waiting impatiently for Anantalvan's visit. Anantalvan says, you must wait, because my command from my Acharya is very clear, very crystal clear. I have to finish stringing the garlands before the flowers could bloom. If I stop and then come, then I'm going to break the command that my Acharya has given. So you have to wait. So he finishes stringing the garlands, and then he takes those fresh garlands, beautiful garlands made out of beautiful flowers, then finally visits Venkatesha. Now Venkatesha is upset. I have been calling out. I sent summons for you. and you don't want to come and meet me first thing in the morning? I have been waiting for you. Incidentally, like Tirukkachi Nambi of Kanchi having conversations with Varadaraja, Anantarvan also had this unique gift that he could have conversations with Srinivasa of Tirumala. So Srinivasa says, I am upset with you. Now, how can you delay this? I was stringing garlands for you. And this is what my Acharya sent me here for. Bhagavan, in his own style, he wanted to play this game with Anantarvan. He says, what if I tell you I'm very so upset and you have to leave Tirumala? Now that you have not come when I summoned you, why should you even stay here? I think it's time for you to pack up and go. Anantarvan looks at Srinivasa. Let me tell you two things. Let me humbly submit 2 points here, Srinivasa. Point number 1, you did not ask me to come here. My Acharya sent me, I came here. If he asked me to come back, I will go. You cannot ask me to go, number 1. Number 2, both of us are visitors here. This is Adivaraha Kshetra. You came and occupied. I also came and occupied based on my Acharya's command. So both of us are visitors here. So therefore, I cannot leave this place until you ask my Acharya to come and command me to leave. I will leave. Srinivasa was so pleased. He was seeing there the very epitome of Acharya Nishta in Anantarvan. Such was Anantarvan's glory. There was another day while doing Kainkarya to Bhagavan, a snake bit Anantarvan. A poisonous snake bit him. And the snake went away. Anantarvan was completely nonchalant. He did not even bother to look what happened. And he continued to do his work. And then he finished doing all the garlands, and together then he went to the Sannidhi, and Bhagavan looks at him and says, a snake bit you and you are not even bothered. Anantarvan says, a snake called ego is biting me every day. Why should I bother about this snake biting me today? And Srinivasa says, but I am worried for you. What if the snake was deadly and what if and something happens to you? No, I don't want anything to happen to you. Bhagavan is having this conversation with Anantarvan. Anantarvan says, thank you for being very concerned, but let me tell you this. I will never be separated from you. Bhagavan says, how so? Let us assume that snake is more powerful and that poison happens to kill me. I will take a dip in Viraja and I will do Kainkarya to Vaikunthanatha. But if this snake he is showing to his body, if this snake turns out to be more powerful than that snake, then I will continue to take a dip in this holy Pushkarani here and do Kainkarya to Sri Shailanatha. Anyway, Kainkarya too will continue whether here on Sri Shaila or in Vaikuntha. It is just a matter of which snake is more powerful than that snake or this snake. No, he considered his very body as a snake. So, such was his exalted jnana that he lived as a sthita prajna. He lived as one who understood what his true nature was, always not conscious, completely unconscious of his identity with his body, always rooted in the knowledge of servitude to his Acharya. And therefore, when he composed the Ramanuja Chatushloki, we can now see how much of that Acharya Pratipatti would be there in every shloka that he has composed. So, we will look at the 4 shlokas of the Chatushloki, the 4 shlokas which are celebrated as Ramanuja Chatushloki. Now, there is a bit of bhakti and jnana, philosophy and conduct, an admixture of both in all these 4 shlokas. Essentially, Anantalvan is celebrating Swami Ramanuja's glories, and in that process, he is also celebrating Swami Ramanuja's association with the 4 sacred places. Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam, Jaya Ramanuja Seshashaila Shringe, Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam, Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe. He is associating Ramanuja with 4 sacred places: Rangadhamni, Seshashaila, Hastidhamni, Yadavadri. Now first let's look at what these 4 places are. When we do Sandhya Vandana, we are expected to conclude the Sandhya Vandana. I'm underlining the word expected to conclude with this very popular and profound shloka. Shri Ranga Mangalanidhim Karunanivasam, Shri Venkatadri Shikaralaya Kalameham, Shri Hasti Shaila Shikarojjvala Parijatam, Shri Shannamami Shirasa Yedu Shaila Deepam. There are 4 sacred places being celebrated here: Sri Rangam, Tirumala, Kanchi, Yadavadri or Melkotte. Sriranga Mangalanidhim Karunanivasam. Ranganatha, Jagannatha of Sriranga, Karunanivasa, the very embodiment of Karuna. Sriranga Mangalanidhim Karunanivasam. Shri Venkatadri Shikaralaya Kalameham, the one who showers profusely his compassion on the bhaktas without even asking, like a cloud that showers rains on parched lands. Srinivasa Venkatesha on Sri Shaila. Shaila means a hill, mountain. Sri Shaila means Tirumala. Tirumala is called Sri Shaila. The mountain is called Sri Shaila. Seshadri, Venkatadri, Narayanadri, Tirumala, various names. Shri Venkatadri Shikaralaya Kalameham. Srinivasa of Tirumala. Shri Hasti Shaila Shikarojjvala Parijatam. Hasti Shaila Shikarojjvala. Hastigiri Masthashekara. Hastigiri is Kanchi. We recently discussed why Kanchi is Hastigiri and the association with Gajendra Moksha. Varada is Gajendra Varada. Hasti Shaila Shikarojjvala Parijata. Varadaraja, Devaraja, Hastigiri Masthashekara, the Lord of Kanchi is celebrated. The third line. Shri Shannamami Sirasa Yedu Shaila Deepam. Yedu Shaila Deepa. The light of Yedu Shaila. Yedu Shaila is Melkotte. Yadavadri. It's also called Yadavadri. These are 4 very significant places. And all these 4 have great association with Swami Ramanuja. And therefore, Anantalvan, through the Chatushloki with 4 shlokas, he is celebrating Swami Ramanuja's divine association with all these 4 places. Rangadhamni is Sri Ranga. Hasti Shaila, Sri Shaila, Tirumala. Hastidhamni, Hastigiri, Kanchi, and Yadavadri, Yedugiri, Melkotte. With all the 4, because we see that there are some very important factors that contributed to Ramanuja's journey, which concerned with all these 4 places. So therefore, in the process of celebrating the glories of Swami Ramanuja, Anantalvan is also celebrating these 4. They are also popularly called Bhoga Mandapam, Pushpa Mandapam, Tyaga Mandapam, Jnana Mandapam. There are 4 mandapas that are very, very significant of all the 108 plus 108 Divya Deshas plus Abhimana Sthalas plus Rishi Sthalas plus Deva Sthalas. the temples that we know of in Bharata Desha, these 4 have special significance because of their association with Swami Ramanuja. Bhoga Mandapam, Bhuloka Vaikuntha, Srirangam. Ranganatha demonstrates why he is ultimately the Bhokta. He is the ultimate Bhokta. Everything we think we are Bhoktas, but when we realize ultimately he is the Bhokta, in Vaikuntha, Bhagavan is constantly in Bhoga, constantly experiencing bliss, and therefore in Srirangam, Ranganatha is in Bhuloka Vaikuntha is also showing that he is the Vaikunthanatha who has come down, and therefore therefore Sriranga is celebrated as Bhoga Mandapa. It is Bhoga to such an extent that Bhagavan cannot be woken up before 6 o'clock or 6:30. Even Suprabhata Vishwarupa Darshana happens only after 6:30. In Tirumala, Bhagavan is not allowed to sleep. Hardly sleeps. Before he could even think of sleeping, Suprabhata starts. But whereas in Srirangam, all the nowadays they say 5:30. By the time you go inside and the screen opens, it's all 6:30. So he is, to that extent, he is he wants Bhoga. So another reason why it is Bhoga Mandapa, because all the utsavams that are done are taking into account the bliss, for giving that required bliss for Bhagavan. So even today, all the utsavas that are done remain the same for 1,000+ years. So Bhagavan is the ultimate Bhogamurti. So Srirangam is celebrated as Bhoga Mandapa. Tirumala is celebrated as Pushpa Mandapa. Bhagavan likes Pushpa Kaikarya there. And obviously being on Seshasaila, which is filled with trees and plants of varied types and beautiful flowers, Bhagavan loves the Kaikarya of Pushpa Kaikarya. So therefore, Srinivasa, Venkatesha, Tirumala, the abode of Tirumala, is celebrated as Pushpa Mandapa. Tyaga Mandapa, Hastigiri Mastashekara, Varada, Devadideva. His place is called Tyaga Mandapa for several reasons. But one major Tyaga that he did was he had to do Tyaga of Ramanuja himself, because when Ranganatha wanted Ramanuja to move from Kanchi to Srirangam, he had no other option but to renounce Ramanuja himself. A great Tyaga that he did. Therefore, Varada is a very embodiment of Tyaga, and Kanchi is celebrated as Tyaga Mandapam. Jnana Mandapam, Melkotte, Tirunarayanapura, Yadavadri. This is where Swami Ramanuja lived for 12 years, and this is where he also established the school of philosophy, and this is where Jnana flourished those days. It was seat. There was a library that was established by Ramanuja himself there, and therefore this place is celebrated as Jnana Mandapa, the 4 Mandapas. Now we will see how Anantalvan is celebrating Ramanuja's glories by associating them with each of these 4 Mandapas, each of these 4 sacred lands, starting with Sriranga. Anisham bhajatam ananya bhajam. He starts with the importance of surrendering to the Jagadacharya. Surrendering to Jagadacharya, Anisham bhajatam ananya bhajam, charanamboruham adarena pumsam. Those who surrender with complete dedication to the lotus feet of the Jagadacharya. Ananya bhaja, undivided focus, undivided bhakti, undivided devotion to the lotus feet of Jagadacharya, then the Jagadacharya bestows vibhutimishtam, he says. Vibhutimishtam. Vibhuti means wealth. Vibhuti, there are 2 kinds of vibhuti. Nitya vibhuti, Leela vibhuti. Now, the moment we talk of Srirangam, that Ranganatha, when he welcomed Ramanuja, he immediately made one important decision. He handed over the governance of the two Vibhutis of Bhagavan, both Nitya Vibhuti and Leela Vibhuti. What is Nitya Vibhuti? Nitya Vibhuti is this creation. Sorry, Leela Vibhuti is this creation, which is subject to changes all the time. Nitya Vibhuti is the Aprakrita Mandala, Vaikuntha, the land of Paramapada. So therefore, the governance of both these Vibhutis of Bhagavan was handed over to Ramanuja, and that is the reason why he came to be also known by the title Udayavar in Tamil. Udayavar means one who possesses. What he possesses? Bhagavan possesses the two Vibhutis, Nitya Vibhuti and Leela Vibhuti. Bhagavan entrusted the task of governance of both these Vibhutis to Ramanuja, and therefore called him Udayavar, one who possesses both the Vibhutis. Now, Srirangam and Ramanuja obviously have great association. Srirangam also happened to be, if we were to use the term, the headquarters of the Sampradaya for Ramanuja, and it also became the Bhuloka Vaikuntha. 1000 years back, Ramanuja set into motion temple administration. Even till today, we see the effect of the administrative policies that were administered 1000 years back still in motion in Srirangam. Nowhere else in the world. Srirangam happens to be the largest temple in the world in terms of the number of acres of land occupied. And if we see the kind of administrative activities that goes on in the temple, it goes by the instructions set into motion 1000 years back by Ramanuja himself. So again, there is a great deep association between Srirangam and Swami Ramanuja. More importantly for us, it is in Srirangam that Swami Ramanuja surrendered to Bhagavan together with Bhagavati on the auspicious day of Panguni Uttiram. Ramanuja surrendered on behalf of all the Jivatmas, and he surrendered to Bhagavan, and not to seek moksha for himself. He is Adisesha Avatara. He surrendered to seek moksha for everybody else, for all his sambandhis. Satyakama, Satyasankalpa, Mahavibhute, Purushottama, Shriman Narayana, Asharanya Sharanya, Ananya Sharanaha, Padara Vindayugalam Sharanamaham Prapadhe. Padara Vindayugalam Sharanamaham Prapadhe. Apara Karunya Vatsalya Saushilya Audarya Aishwarya Saundarya Mahodade. The way Swami Ramanuja surrendered to Bhagavan, seeking his Sharanagati was for the sake of all the Jivatmas. And the significance for us is that he secured moksha for us 1000 years back. And what transpired was a brilliant conversation between Emberumanar and Ranganatha. Surrendering to Ranganatha, Ramanuja seeks the ultimate reward, the prapya. Prapya means the ultimate goal, the ultimate reward. And what is the ultimate reward? Bhagavad Anubhava Janita Kainkarya, Nitya Kainkarya, eternal service to Bhagavan. Whether here or hereafter, on Bhuloka or in Vaikuntha, Nitya Kainkarya. Now immediately Bhagavan asks him, you are asking for the ultimate reward of moksha, the prapya of Bhagavat Nitya Kainkarya. What do you have? What qualifications do you have? Why do you think you deserve? Now, we must know that this conversation between Ramanuja and Ranganatha is not conversation between Ramanuja and Ranganatha. It is a conversation between every Jivatma and Bhagavan. Because here the Jagadacharya is just representing and talking on our behalf to Bhagavan. So the question that Bhagavan immediately asks, why do you think you deserve this ultimate reward? What are your qualifications? And then Swami immediately replies, my qualifications, if you ask me, what do I have? I have two things. Akinchanyam ananyagatit. What do you think I have? I have nothing. And there is one thing that I know I have, the relationship between you and me. You are the Swami and I am your Dasa. Therefore, you have to give me what I am seeking. When a child goes to his or her mother and says, I am hungry, mother never turns around and asks, are you qualified for this meal today? What do you have? What do you can give that I can feed you? The mother never questions. So therefore, you are my Swami, and therefore, why should you even ask, what do I have? You must give you the prapya, the ultimate reward that I am seeking. But Bhagavan doesn't stop there. Do you think you have nothing? Can you find out what you actually have? Ramanuja thinks, yes, I know what I have. I have your lotus feet, and therefore the means to attain you is that something which I have. I am your Dasa, you are my Swami. Then Bhagavan asks, if you are my Dasa, then why are you seeking Dasyatva? Ultimately, Kainkarya that you are seeking is servitude. If you are already a servant, why are you seeking servitude? And Ramanuja says, because I keep forgetting what I have. So therefore, what I am asking is that you have to keep reminding me what I keep forgetting all the time. Oh, is that so? So finally, what do you want? I want you to keep reminding me that you are my Swami, I am your Dasa. I want you to give me all the jnana that I need. Give me the Seshatva jnana, the jnana that I am your eternal servant. Also, give me the Shraddha that I need so that I continue to ask you, and also give me the Nitya Kainkarya. If everything that you need is that something I have to give you, then what is that you will do? You want me to give you the jnana, you want me to give you the Shraddha, you want me to give you the Kainkarya, you also want me to keep reminding you that I am the Swami, you are the Dasa. Then what is that you will do? All that I can do is keep asking you once in a while, whenever it is possible. And one thing I can do, I will at least try not to prevent rejecting what you give me. This one thing I can try. This is the one thing that I can try. I can try not rejecting what you keep giving me all the time. This is the ultimate essence of this expression of Akinchanya, that helplessness where even to ask Bhagavan, I am helpless to such an extent, sometimes I do not even know what to ask. So therefore, you must know what is good for me, and you must keep giving me. You must give me the jnana for me to realize what I need to ask you. And even if I stop asking you what I must ask you, you must keep giving me all the time. So this is exactly what the conversation goes on, but this is not Swami Ramanuja asking for himself. He is essentially representing each and every one of us. And that is the reason why Sharanagati Gadya, one which he composed in Srirangam, one of the three Gadyas, is the very quintessence of Prapatti Shastra, Sharanagati Shastra. And when Anantarvan celebrates Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam, may Ramanuja eternally reside in Sriranga, the place where he surrendered on our behalf. And when we celebrate his glories, we are reminded of the assurance that he got from Bhagavan that moksha is guaranteed not just for Ramanuja, but for all those who are at, who serve his lotus feet. Therefore, he says, the Ananya Bhajam, the one who is eternally devoted with undivided devotion to Swami Ramanuja's lotus feet, moksha is guaranteed. Thus, Anantalvan celebrates the first, the Sriranga, the Bhoga Mandapa and its association with Swami Ramanuja. Next one is celebration of Sri Shaila, Tirumala. Bhuvino Vimatam Stvadiya Suktihi. Now here, Swami Ramanuja's works that clarified the doubts in the Shastras is being highlighted very clearly. Bhuvino Vimatam Suktihi Kulushi Bhuya Kudrishtbis Sametan Shakali Karute Vipaschididya Jaya Ramanuja Sesha Shaila Shringe Jaya Ramanuja Sesha Shaila Shringe. May Ramanuja eternally reside on Sesha Shaila, Tirumala. Again, there's a great association between Tirumala and Swami Ramanuja. We know that even the naming of Ramanuja has association with Tirumala. How? Because Ramanuja's maternal uncle, Periya Tirumala Nambi, he resides in Tirumala. And when Ramanuja's Avatara took place, it was Periya Tirumala Nambi who came all the way from Tirumala, who named the little child as Ramanuja. So the association with Tirumala starts right at that time. Also, when Ramanuja visited Tirumala the first time, he already knew the sanctity of the place and he refused to climb, knowing that it is the very body of Adisesha. He said, how can I commit a sacrilege by placing my feet on the sacred hill? But then all his disciples, including also his Acharya Periya Tirumala Nambi, Anantalvan, everybody who by then are already moved, requested Swami not to refuse coming up to the hill. What did he do? He climbed up the hill on his knees. And there were no steps those days. It was all rocky terrain, and he climbed all the way on his knees without ever placing his feet on the mountain itself. Such was his devotion to the Sri Shaila. And we all know it is Swami Ramanuja who presented the Shankha and Chakra to Srinivasa. So we see several associations between Srinivasa and Ramanuja, and also there is this interesting legend where again Srinivasa demonstrates how whatever Ramanuja asks is done, to such an extent that there was this cowherd lady who was supplying milk and curds to the temple, and she wanted moksha one day. Just like how the fruit seller went to Krishna in Vrindavana asking for moksha, this cowherd lady approached Srinivasa and said, I've been supplying milk and curds to you. It's time. She was a great bhakta. She said, it's time that you give me moksha. Srinivasa said, no, I've already delegated the task to Swami Ramanuja. He is whatever. Both Nitya Vibhuti and Leela Vibhuti are being governed by him. So even moksha pradatva has been handed over to him. You better go and ask. She rushes to Swami Ramanuja. Immediately he writes a recommendation letter. I hereby, request you, hey Srinivasa, to immediately grant moksha to this cowherd lady. Such was his bond with the Lord of Venkata, Srinivasa. Ramanuja's celebrated work called Vedartha Samgraha, which is the very compendium of his commentaries on all the Upanishads, was composed right in front of Srinivasa. Asesha Chitachit Vastu Seshine Seshasayine Nirmalananta Kalyani Nidhaye Vishnave Namaha. This is how he begins the glorious Vedartha Sangraha there. Asesha Chidachit Vastu Seshine Seshasayine. He is standing in front of Srinivasa. Srinivasa is standing there. but he addresses him as Seshasayine. We know Ranganatha is Sheshasayi. Ranganatha is reclining on Adisesha. So if somebody were to address Ranganatha as Seshasai, we can understand. But Ramanuja is addressing Srinivasa and he says, Asesha Chidachid Vastu Seshine Seshasayine. Srinivasa is standing, he is not reclining Adisesha. One may wonder, why is he addressing Venkatesha as Seshasai? The entire Tirumala is Sesha, he is there, so he is Seshasai. So therefore, Seshine Seshasayine Nirmalananta Kalyani Nidhaye Vishnave Namaha. The very first sentence, the very first invocation of the Vedartha Sangraha, which is the compendium of all the essence of Upanishads, is given here. And it comes out as a conversation with Bhagavan there. And Anantalvan is referring to that work, that Vedartha Sangraha of Swami Ramanuja in this shloka, when he says, Bhuvino Vimatams Tvadiya Suktihi. Tvadiya Suktihi. Sukti, your utterances. Bhuvino Vimatams Tvadiya Suktihi. Kulishi Bhuya Kutrishkibhis Sametan. He says, your suktis, your utterances are like thunderbolts which break into pieces the philosophies that are against what the Vedas and the Upanishads teach. The philosophies, Kudrishti, Drishti, Kudrishti. Drishti means vision. Sudrishti, right vision. Kudrishti, wrong vision. The philosophies that interpret the Vedas and the Upanishads wrongly, your suktis, your Shri Suktis, destroy those philosophies like a thunderbolt, and like a thunderbolt hitting a rock and breaking into pieces. Shakali kurute vipaschididya. And therefore, you are respected for integrating the diverse views presented by the Upanishads. So one of the challenges in Sanatana Dharma, we do not have one text. You all know this by now. If somebody asks, what is that one text in Sanatana Dharma, we will say, we don't have one text, we have a library. Now, the moment we have a library, it is a strength, but it also can become a weakness. Why it can become a weakness? With the varied nature of these texts, seemingly there can be diverse viewpoints, diverse opinions, diverse interpretations. And this is a big challenge presented within the texts of Sanatana Dharma. Even when we look at the Vedas and the Upanishads, there are many who look at the Vedas as distinct and different from the Upanishads and say Vedas are separate, Upanishads are separate, they have no connection whatsoever. And therefore, the way one interprets the message of Vedas is so very different to the messages interpreted from the Upanishads. And all of a sudden, there is conflict between the Vedas and the Upanishads. Vedas seem to be talking about a multitude of higher beings. This is where the so-called polytheism as understood by the Western world comes in, because the Vedas talk about different devatas, propitiating to different devatas, whereas the Upanishads seem to be talking about one supreme being. Now, if we look at these two as two different set of texts, there seems to be an inherent conflict. Within the Upanishads, some part of Upanishads talk about there is only one reality. Some parts of Upanishads seem to be talking about reality is not one, reality is many. So there seems to be inherent conflicts within the Upanishads. So therefore, one of the biggest challenges for philosophers in India, in Bharat Desha, is this seemingly the apparent contradictions and conflicts which give room for misinterpretations. And therefore here, Anantalvan is celebrating Swami Ramanuja's glories, where he integrated not only people, he integrated philosophies. So he established how every text in the library of Sanatana Dharma has to be understood as speaking loudly only one single message. He demonstrated how there is no apparent contradiction between the Vedas and the Upanishads. The Vedas and the Upanishads are one single body of knowledge. There is a nice flow that he established, flowing from the Vedas to the Vedanta. He also established how the seeming conflicts within the Upanishads. There are Bheda Shrutis and Abheda Shrutis in Upanishads. I will talk about, very briefly about this. Bheda Shruti means that part of Upanishads which talk about differences. There is a different Jivatma, Paramatma, Jagat. Bheda Shrutis talk about how each of these tattvas are distinct and different. There are Abheda Shrutis. Abheda means no Bheda, which basically say there are no multiple realities. Tattva is one. Jivatma, Paramatma, and Jagat are all one. There is nothing other than one reality. Now, how can the same body of Upanishads talk about two different things in a conflicting way? And through his works, Ramanuja established that both of these seemingly contradictory and conflicting Shrutis ultimately speak only one language. So he brought in harmony, he also brought in integration, and therefore here he is being celebrated as the one who essentially, he say, bhuvino vimatam stvadiya suktihi kulishi bhuya kutushtivis sametan shakali kurute vipaschididya. The one who broke to pieces those conflicting philosophies which bring in these discrepancies in the Vedas and the Upanishads. To that Ramanuja, glory to that Ramanuja, who may eternally live on Tirumala. That is celebration of Sheshashaila. Now we move on to the third shloka. Now this is where the celebration of Hastishaila, Hastigiri, Hastidhamni, Kanchi. In many ways, we can say the journey of Swami Ramanuja is shaped by his stay in Kanchipuram. In many ways, it is Varadaraja who is responsible for shaping the journey of Swami Ramanuja. We will see how. Shrutishu, Smritishu, Pramana-tattvam, Kripayalokya, Shrutishu, Smritishu. Shruti means the Vedas, Smriti, Itihasa, Purana, Gita, all the works which support the Vedas. Shrutishu, Smritishu, Pramana-tattvam, Kripayalokya, Vishuddhayahi, Buddhya, with clarity of thought, with a pure mind, and more importantly, with lot of compassion. This is ultimately very, very necessary. Compassion here is also for Bhagavan. This is what is called Vatsalya, Bhakta's Vatsalya towards Bhagavan. Ramanuja's journey in Kanchipuram began under the tutelage of Yadava Prakasha. Yadava Prakasha was one of those leading teachers of those times, and Ramanuja's mother took Ramanuja to Yadava Prakasha's school, and Ramanuja became his disciple. And the study began under the guidance of Yadava Prakasha. And one fine day, Yadava Prakasha, and those were the days when the Sishyas did Kainkarya to the Guru, and Ramanuja was giving oil bath to Yadava Prakasha. And while Yadava Prakasha was enjoying the oil massage given by Swami Ramanuja, Yadava Prakasha, and this was also the time used for the conversations between the Guru and Sishya, and they were having a conversation on Chandogya Upanishad. Atayesho antaraditye hiranyamaya purushaga drishyate hiranyaspashru hiranyakeshaha apranakat sarvayeva swarnaha tasyata kapyasam pundarikamevam akshini. The Chandogya Upanishad describes the glorious form of Narayana, and it concludes tasya yata kapyasam pundarikamevam akshini. We all know Bhagavan is celebrated as Pundarikaksha. Across all the Shastras, if there is one dharma, one attribute that can be used to identify the Parabrahman, it is that attribute of he being Pundarikaksha. To such an extent that even during Matsyavatara, Bhagavan could not hide that he is Pundarikaksha. Even the Matsya had such beautiful lotus-like eyes. Vedanta Deshika says, when the Matsya looked all around in the ocean, the cosmic ocean, everything became a lotus flower, it seems. And all of a sudden, there were millions of beautiful lotus flowers blossoming everywhere. Wherever Bhagavan's Kataksha fell, there was a lotus flower which bloomed. Such was the power of the beauty of his eyes. Now, Tasya yatha kapyasam pundarikam makshini. This is what the Upanishad declares. Now, Yadava Prakasha is now interpreting and giving the description of this Upanishad to his Sishya. And when it came to interpreting Tasya yatha kapyasam, kapi means monkey. Tasya yatha kapyasam, kapi asam. Asam means the backside of a monkey. The backside of a monkey is red in color. So the interpretation here is Tasya yatha kapyasam. Yatha kapyasam. Just like how the backside of a monkey is red in color, Bhagavan's eyes, Pundarika, his eyes are, say, reddish in color. This is the interpretation given by Yadava Prakasha. Now, as Yadava Prakasha was explaining, giving this meaning, Swami Ramanuja became very silent. It did not, and tears started rolling out from his eyes. Warm tears rolled out, and Yadava Prakasha could sense, and it fell. Tear droplets fell on his shoulders. He looked around and saw Ramanuja crying. Why? How do you have the heart to even describe that glorious lotus eyes of Bhagavan and use the adjective of the backside of a monkey? How do you even have the heart to do that? Yadava Prakasha, a great Vedanti, one of those leading Vedantis of that time, he says, as per, he proves, as per grammar, this is exactly how one should interpret it. There is nothing wrong about it. This is what Upanishad declares. Kapi asam, kapyasam. Therefore, it has the reddish color is because is being compared to the backside of a monkey. Ramanuja disagrees, and Yadava Prakasha is very upset. And later, it turned out also that he was so upset with Ramanuja's understanding and the way he started to express himself. Yadava Prakasha started to hate Ramanuja to such an extent. Later, he schemes to get Ramanuja killed. That's a separate story altogether. And eventually, he transforms and becomes his disciple. That's another story altogether. But that is not the context here. The context here, coming back, later in Sri Bhashyam, when he is writing his commentary on the Brahma Sutras, Ramanuja explains beautifully. And this is why he stands apart. When we look at every other commentary, we have hundreds of commentaries on the Brahma Sutras, but Sri Bhashya, Ramanuja's Bhashya, is not called Ramanuja Bhashya or Sharirika Bhashya. It is called Sri Bhashya. Sharada Devi in Kashmira named it as Sri Bhashya for this simple reason, because he stands out in the way to interpret the right message, the purport of the Vedas and the Vedanta. Gambhiramba Sambhuta Samrishtanala Ravikara Vikasita Amala Ayatanekshana. He gives a beautiful explanation to Kapyasam Pundarikam Makshini. Now, Kapi Asam Kapyasam. Kapi kam pibati kapihi. Kam pibati kapihi. Therefore, kapihi adityaha. This is one meaning what to be derived. How kapi is aditya? Kapi can also mean aditya, the sun, because kam pibati kapihi, the one who drinks water, is kapihi. Surya, aditya, draws water, drinks water from the earth. Therefore, kam pibati kapihi adityaha. So kapi can also mean aditya. Kam pibati kapihi nalam. Nalam means the stem of the lotus flower. The stem of the lotus flower also sucks water, drinks water. And therefore, the stem of the lotus flower can also be called Nalam, can also be called Kapi. Therefore, Kapi, Asam, that which sits on Kapi is Kapyasam. The lotus flower which beautifully sits on the clean, pure, shining stem is also Kapyasam. The clean, pure, shining stem, the lotus flower continues to bloom as long as the stem remains. Now, we all know this. The longer the stem remains, the longer is the blooming state of the lotus flower. And when the stem is clean, pure, and shining, the lotus that sits on top of such a shining, pure stem is even more beautiful. Therefore, Kapyasam. The first one, Kapihi Adityaha, sun rays. As long as the sun rays is there, lotus keeps blooming. The moment sun rays disappears, it stops to bloom. Therefore, Kapyasam is that beautiful lotus flower that is kissed by the glorious rays of sun. That is Kapyasam. Kapi also means water, and Kapyasam, that which sits on top of water. When the lotus continues to sit on water, it remains fresh for a long time. So therefore, that lotus which sits on the water, it remains fresh. Therefore, he says, Gambhirambha Sambhuta Samrishtanala Ravikara Vikasita. He says, Gambhirambha Sambhuta, great glorious lotus flower that rests on the water, therefore which is fresh all the time. Gambhiramba Sambhuta Samrishtanala, that which is resting on a glorious, shiny, pure stem, and therefore is blossoming all the time. Avikara Vikasita, that is kissed by the glorious rays of sun, even more beautiful. Such is the glory. Amala, pure. Ayata, long, wide, ikshana, tasyayata kapyasam pundarikameva makshini. Such is the beautiful definition he brings in to how Bhagavan's lotus eyes are wide, long, fresh, always streaming forth grace and love. They are to be compared to such glorious, bountiful and beautiful lotus flower that is inseparable from water, always in association with sun, which is always seated on top of a shining star, and therefore is always blossoming, never closes. Such is the glory of Bhagavan's eyes. And this is the way we see how in his commentaries on the Upanishads and the Vedas, Ramanuja extracts the essence of the message, and therefore here he's in Anantarvan is saying Shrutishu, Smritishu, Pramana Tattvam, Kripaya Lokya Vishesha, Kripaya, with compassion. A heart which is filled with compassion, with love, alone can look at the inner purport of these messages. Kripaya Lokya Vishuddhaya hi buddhya. Vishuddha, with the clarity of mind, with the purity granted by Bhagavan himself. And therefore, here he is also pointing out the second part of the shloka. Akrita swatayeva bhashyaratnam, he says. Now, what is bhashyaratna? What is bhashyaratna? Sri Bhashya is referring to. What is important here? The association of Swami Ramanuja with Hasti Shaila. How did Kanchi Varada shape Ramanuja's journey in coming up with the magnum opus called Sri Bhashya, which is the most authoritative text commentary on the Brahma Sutras of Vedavyasa. Ramanuja had lots of questions, like all of us. Those who undertake to understand the Vedas and the Upanishads are immediately challenged. When we look at the depth and the breadth of knowledge available here, it's like an ocean, and the kind of questions that one gets. Ramanuja also had similar questions that were riddling him, puzzling him, and he had several questions in his mind, and he wanted clarity, and he approached his guru Tirukkachi Nambi. And Tirukachinambi was known for his ability to converse with Varadaraja. So he was doing the service of Alavatta. Alavatta means fan. Whenever this Kainkariya was done, Tirukachinambi, by fanning, doing the fan service to Varada, he used to also parallelly have this conversation with him every day. So everybody knew Tirukachinambi had this unique gift of having intimate conversations with Bhagavan himself. And therefore Ramanuja approached him and asked him, I have certain questions, some clarifications that I need. They have been troubling me for a long time. I do not have clarity because the Upanishads and the Vedas seem to be presenting many conflicting views. How do I reconcile all these conflicting views, and how do I come up with the true purport of the Vedas and the Upanishads? I have a set of questions. I need answers to these questions. Tirukachinambigal said, fine, I will convey what you have to Varada. And he did not ask him what your questions are, because he knows, Bhagavan already knows what is troubling Ramanuja. So the next day, during the Alavatta Kainkariya, he submits himself to Varada and says, Swami Ramanuja seems to have some questions to ask you. Then immediately Bhagavan says, I know, let me tell you the answers. Please go and convey the answers to him. So this is how Swami Ramanuja was given answers from Varada himself through Tirukachinambi. This is what is celebrated as the 6 axioms. Ahameva param tattvam, darshanam veda evacha, upayeshu prapattishyat, antima smriti varjanam, dehavasane muktisyat, purnamacharya samashrayam. 6 answers. Now, nobody knew what questions Ramanuja asked. After the answers were given, nobody knew what answers were given. But Ramanuja understood, Varada understood. Tirukachinambi, the mediator, took the questions, brought the answers. Now, these answers shaped further Ramanuja's journey in writing the Sri Bhashya. In all his works, Ahameva param tattvam. The first answer given by Varada himself. Ahameva param tattvam. Like when Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he said, Sarvadharman parityajya, mamekam sharanam vraja. Mamekam sharanam vraja. Ahameva param tattvam. I am the param tattva. There is no other param. Categorical declaration with no iota of doubt whatsoever. Ahameva param Narayana param brahma tattvam Narayana paraha. Narayana parojyotir atma Narayana paraha. Yachakinchit jagat sarvam trishyate shruyate piva antar bahishchatat sarvam yapya Narayana stitaha. So first question, like when Yudhishthira asked Bhishma, Kimekam devatam loke, Kimvapyekam parayana, Kimekam devatam loke. So similarly here, answer, who is the Paradevata, who is the Supreme? Ahameva param tattva. Answer very clear. That param tattva is Varadaraja, Devadiraja. Darshanam Veda Evacha. The second, this is a very, very, very important answer which shaped Swami Ramanuja's spiritual journey further, also his philosophical journey. Darshanam Veda Evacha. Darshana is vision. Bheda means differences, which means Tattva is not Abheda, is Bheda. Now we'll spend 5 minutes on this, and I will make it as simple as we can, because it is important to understand the philosophical import of this answer. Now there is one school of philosophy which says Trivida Beda Rahitam Brahman. Now these are some Sanskrit terms. If you want, you can even note it down. Trivida Beda Rahitam Brahman. Brahman is supreme being. Trivida Beda Rahita. Trivida means 3. Beda Rahita, which means he is devoid of the 3 kinds of Vedas. The answer here that Varada is giving to Swami Ramanuja is Darshanam Veda Evacha, which means Trivida Veda Yukta. The one who has all the 3 Vedas is Brahman. So now we need to understand what the difference is between, and what are this Trivida Veda. What are the, when we talk about reality, what are the three types of Bheda that we must understand here? Sajatiya Bheda, Vijatiya Bheda, Swagata Bheda. Three terms. Sajatiya, Vijatiya, Swagata. Jati means class. Sajatiya Bheda, the Bheda, the differences that come between entities belonging to the same class. Very simple example. Let's take trees. A coconut tree, mango tree. A coconut tree is distinct and different from a mango tree. Both are trees, but there is Sajatiya Bheda. Jati is tree. Both of them belong to the same jati, but there is a Bheda. Coconut tree is different from a mango tree. Similarly, when we look at Tattva, reality, sentient and insentient, you can classify. Achetana vastu, chetana vastu. Achetana means insentient, devoid of any jnana, knowledge. Prakriti is achetana. Now, chetana, sentient. Within this, there are two subcategories. Jivatma, Paramatma. The jati is chetana, which is different from achetana. Now, within the same jati of chetana, sentient, Paramatma and Jivatma are distinct and different. This is Sajatiya Bheda. Jati is the chetana jati. Sajatiya Bheda means there is a difference between Paramatma and Jivatma. So, the first is Sajatiya Bheda. The second comes Vijatiya Bheda. Bheda between different classes. There is a difference between a tree and an animal. A coconut tree and a cow. Cow belongs to the jati of animals. Coconut tree belongs to the jati of trees. This jati, this entity and this entity are distinct and different. Vijatiya Bheda. So, similarly, go back to our tattvas. What are Vijatis? Chetana, Achetana. Prakriti, Achetana is distinct and different from Chetana, which is Jivatma, which is distinct and different from Paramatma also. So, clearly, Vijatiya Bheda. So, this is the second Bheda. Sajatiya Bheda, Vijatiya Bheda. The third Bheda, Swagata Bheda. This is a little bit more intricate. Swagata Bheda means differences within an entity. Now, let's take a coconut tree. Coconut tree is one, but coconut tree has a trunk which is different from the branches it has, which is different from the coconut that grows on it, which is different from the leaves that come out of the tree. So, there are different parts to the coconut tree. There are different colors in the coconut tree. Some parts of coconut tree is brown, some parts are black, some parts are green. So, Swagata Bheda means differences that arise within the same entity. You take a cow, the cow has horns, has ears, has a tail, there are different parts. So, the parts are distinct and different from the whole to which they belong. Similarly, when we take Tattva, Ishvara, Bhagavan, Paramatma Tattva, the Paramatma Tattva, he has parts, his gunas, his vibhuti, his aishwarya, all of this are distinct from him, are inseparable. Just like cow, the white color is distinct, whiteness is different to cowness, but the cow and white are inseparable. But these are two distinct, this is Swagata Bheda. Similarly, the gunas of Bhagavan are distinct and different from him, but yet together with him. So therefore, the difference that we need to understand here is, there is one school, which is the Advaita, which says Bheda Rahita, the Trivida Bheda Rahitam Brahman, and the other school which says Trivida Bheda Yuktam Brahman. So therefore here, the Bheda, therefore when he's the 6 answers that given, second answer is Darshanam Bheda Evacha. So Varada is essentially now shaping. So now how do I therefore reconcile Bheda and Abheda? Then comes the question. This is where the Swagata comes. Therefore, Bheda and Abheda are the two entities can be distinct and different, and yet when they become separable, they can also be considered as one. This is how reality can be one or three at the same time. Now, the analogy we can take for this to understand is the analogy of this body itself. The body has, we all easily understand the Atma and the Sharira. Now, Atma and Sharira, after 18 chapters of the Gita, we all will say are distinct and different. Luckily, I don't think anybody will say they're one and the same. So they're distinct and different. They are distinct and different, but as long as the Atma resides in the body, they are also one. They are also one. They are one. They are also distinct and different. Similarly, the three tattvas are also one and also many. So this is how he reconciles the oneness and the manyness. Darshanam bheda evacha means darshana is bheda, and it can also be abheda when we look at everything which is bheda eventually is part and parcel of Bhagavan as his gunas, as his vibhuti. This is what in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 11th chapter, Krishna shows everything is his vibhuti. Nothing is without him. Everything is inseparable from him. Each and every vibhuti is distinct and different from him, but together with all the vibhutis, reality is one. So, the answer to the question is Tattva 1 or Tattva 3. The answer is Tattva Traya, but the three Tattvas together is also one. So this is the beautiful way how Swami Ramanuja reconciles the seeming. So therefore, in the Sanatana Dharma, if you look at the schools of philosophies, we have the Advaita Siddhanta, which is focused on the Abheda part, and we have the Dvaita Siddhanta, which is focused on the Bheda part. So Abheda Shrutis, Bheda Shrutis. So they give prominence to Abheda Shrutis. The Dvaita Siddhanta gives prominence to Bheda Shrutis, and both are equally true. Therefore, looking at both Bheda and Abheda, he reconciles both. This is why the Siddhanta is called Visishtadvaita. Is Advaita is Visishta Advaita, Visishta Advaita. So he reconciles. Darshanam Bheda evacha, Ahameva Param Tattvam, Darshanam Bheda evacha, Upayeshu Prapattishyat. The Upaya is Sharanagati Prapatti. Antima Smriti Varjanam. In the Gita, Krishna says Antima Smriti is important. But then we all have asked this question, if Antima Smriti is important and if we are unable to remember him due to several reasons which are beyond our control, then what happens to a bhakta, what happens to a prapanna? And in Varaha Charma Shloka, Bhagavan gives a clear answer, and that's the answer that Varada is giving to Ramanuja. Antima Smriti Varjanam. The one who surrenders to Bhagavan, to a prapanna, Antima Smriti is taken care of by Bhagavan himself. He shall remember even when we cannot remember him at the time of death. Antima Smriti Varjanam. Dehavasane mukti syat. Now again, there is this question. Is mukti possible while we continue to live on this planet? Some people talk about Jivan Mukti. Now, is Jivan Mukti real Mukti? Now, this is where Dehavasane Mukti Syat. Mukti, true Mukti is only possible when the utility of the body comes to an end. When the Atma exits the body, takes the Archiradi Marga and eventually reaches Paramapada Vaikuntha. So, Mukti is not possible. Until then, as long as the Atma is residing in the Deha, the Prarabdha has to be expended. So therefore, there cannot be real mukti. There can be mukti at the level of the mind, but still the Deha is subject to the forces of Prarabdha. So therefore, Dehavasane mukti syat. Purnamacharya samashrayam. He then recommends that you have to go and do your Panchasamskara, get initiated by your guru, who is Purnamacharya Samashraya. So he gets the answers of all the questions that he had, and thus his journey begins. Therefore, in many ways, Kanchi Varada shapes Ramanuja's journey right from the time of his childhood. Therefore, Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam. We have one more shloka to go. How are we doing on time? Yeah, we'll finish. Jayamayi Mathandakara Bhano, Jaya Bahya Pramukata Vikrushano, Jaya Samshruta Sindhu Sita Bhano, Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadrishange. Very beautifully constructed. Jayamayi Mathandakara Bhano. Mayi Mathandakara. Mayavada. Here again, Anantarvan is singing the glory of how Ramanuja arrested the growth of Mayavada. What is Mayavada? There is a difference when in the Gita, Krishna talks of Maya, many times it is misunderstood as Mithya. Nowhere in the Gita there is a mention of Mithya at all. Mithya means illusion. Illusion of perception, which means this world is unreal. This world does not exist. Nowhere in the Gita, Krishna talks about the world as being unreal. It is illusion in terms of our conception. It is not illusion in terms of perception. The world is real. The Jagat as a Prakriti Tattva is real. Mayavada is a philosophy where the entire world is considered as illusion, and it's an illusory appearance of that one Tattva, which is Brahman. Brahma Satyam Jagan Mithya. Brahma Satya, the Brahman is Satya, the only truth. Everything else is Mithya, everything else is false. There is no Jiva, there is no Prakriti, everything else is false. Everything is just an illusory appearance. This is called Brahma Vivartavada. Vivarta means appearance, false appearance. So, a very popular analogy is given to that. If somebody looks at a rope and mistakes it to be a snake, this is the most popular analogy that is given. And similarly, this rope being mistaken to a snake, the snake is the Vivarta of the rope. So similarly, this whole entire Jagat is the Vivarta, Brahma Vivartavada. Therefore, here, Jayamayi Mathandakara Bhano, the sun who dispelled the darkness of Mayavada. So Mayavada was conquered by Swami Ramanuja, where clearly establishes that Maya is not Mithya. Maya is Prakriti. Maya is subject to everything that keeps changing. Maya is temporary, but it is not unreal. Jaya Bahya Pramukatavi Krishano. Pramukatavi Krishano, the fire that burnt away the forests of Bahya. Bahya here refers to all the Avaidika matas. Again, we have to go back to how Sanatana Dharma is structured. This is very important for us to understand. Even today, when we look at atheism, when we look at people who criticize and come up with their own different kinds of arguments, this is nothing new to Sanatana Dharma. In fact, within Sanatana Dharma, atheism is accepted as one of the philosophies. So when we look at Dharma, Darshana, there are two broad Darshanas. Avaidika Darshana, Vaidika Darshana. Within Avaidika Darshana, there is a mata called Charvaka Mata. Charvaka Mata essentially says, life is nothing but, life is meant to be enjoyed. Bodily pleasures are the summum bonum of life. Don't care for anything, just enjoy today. Don't think about whether it is right, wrong. Nothing matters as long as you are enjoying. As long as you are feeding your senses, everything is okay. Charvaka Mata. No, we may think that's what is happening today. No, this Charvaka Mata is thousands of years old. So this is Avaidika Mata. Other Avaidika matas are also Bauddha and Jaina matas are also Avaidika matas. What are the Vaidika matas? There are 6 darshanas under Vaidika matas out of second phase of Gurukul, level 2. Sankhya, Yoga, Naiyayika, Vaisheshika, Purva Mimamsa, Uttara Mimamsa. Now I'm not going, don't worry. Suddenly all of you, what is happening? Unfortunately, having got lost, our connection with our own, Shastras, all these seem to be like algebra to a, 2-year-old, right? What is this Sankhya, Naiyayika, Vaisheshika? They are all philosophy. Goes to show how rich ancient Bharatiyas were in terms of their ability to seek the nature of truth. So there are 6 darshanas which are Vaidika darshanas. We are not going to go deep into that. And there are 3 darshanas which are Avaidika darshanas. Now, Avaidika darshanas are Charvaka, Bauddha, Jaina. Now, Avaidika means these darshanas do not accept the validity of Vedas. Interestingly, even in the Vaidika matas, Vaidika darshanas, there is one darshana which is Nirishwara darshana, which accepts Vedas but does not accept Ishwara, which is Nirishwara Sankhya, which only accepts Purusha and Prakriti, does not accept Ishwara. So even that darshana is also there. Now, it is a different story how we will see all these darshanas were integrated by Swami Ramanuja, how he derived the wisdom out of all of this and eventually showed one integrated framework. That's a long story. We're not going there now. Bahya Pramukatavi Krishano. Here, Bahya Pramukatavi. This is the Avaidika darshanas of Charvaka, Bauddha, Jaina. Now, we also know Adi Shankara spent his entire lifetime actually arresting the growth of Bauddha Mata. Thanks to Adi Shankara and Swami Ramanuja, Vaidika Mata is still being practiced today in Bharata. Otherwise, Bauddha Mata and Jaina Mata would have completely taken over and Vedas would have been lost forever, at least in Kali Yuga. So obviously Kali Yuga had to extend for some more time. We see Adi Shankara's relentless effort establishing, when he traveled all over Bharata, all that he did was establishing Vaidika Mata versus Bauddha Mata and eventually started. Now, the work of Adi Shankara remained incomplete, and Swami Ramanuja took over not only Bauddha Mata, even the Jaina Mata. And for those of us who went to Melkote, there is this place called Tondanur, where we see even till today how Swami Ramanuja presented himself in his original form as Adisesha. And he had a debate with 12,000 Jaina scholars at one time. Today we talk of Ashtavadhanis. I don't know how many of you have heard of this phrase called Ashtavadhani. Ashta means 8. Ashtavadhani means a scholar who can actually debate with 8 people. 8 people throw their questions on varied subjects, and then the scholar gets all the 8 questions and then goes back answering all the 8 in the same sequence and gives the appropriate answer. Not easy at all. Now, to handle 8 itself is great. To handle 12,000, and obviously Adisesha Avatara easily handled, and this is where the revolution began. Based, that is why it is Jnana Mandapa. Bahya Jaya Bhahya Pramukata Vikrishano, where he conquered the Bahya Matas. Jaya Samsrita Sindhu Sita Bhano and Samsrita Sindhu Sita Bhano. Here we see 3 kinds of analogies Anantarvan is using. He is the sun, the scorching sun who dispels the darkness of Mayavada, the fire that burnt away the forests of all the Avaidika Matas, the cooling grace of moon that cools one's mind by giving us the Prapatti Shastra, by giving us ways and means of experiencing Bhagavan to Bhakti Marga, by opening the door to one and all. It was during his time that the door to spirituality was open to one and all without any discrimination. He gave a completely new perspective to the qualification that is needed for attaining Bhagavan. So therefore, through his works on Bhakti Shastra and Prapatti Shastra, he gave us tools, ways, means where we can experience the glorious gunas of Bhagavan. And therefore, Jaya Samshruta Sindhu Sita Bhano, Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe. May that Ramanuja eternally reside in Yadavadri. Even today, Ramanuja resides in Yadavadri through his Archa Vigraha. It is celebrated as Tamaruganda Tirumeni. When Ramanuja, after 12 years, decided to go back to Srirangam, all the disciples there their hearts were broken, crestfallen. They couldn't bear the separation from their Acharya, and they submitted to him that he needs to stay back. And it is then he decided to get an image of his crafted, a vigraha made, Tamaruganda Tirumeni, and that was left behind. And even today, we can have darshana of that great Acharya in Melkote. Rangadhamni Nityam, Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam. In Srirangam, even today, we can see him eternally residing there. Tanana Tirumeni. We can see Ramanuja's own divine Archa Murti there, where even today we can see him talking to us. He is there in his own form, and even today we see his nails, his toes, his eyes, ever inviting, arresting our attention. And in Sriranga, he eternally resides. Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam. Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam. Hastigiri in Kanchi. We see there Ramanuja continuing to remain there. Even in Kanchi, again we have a divine, closer to Kanchi we should say, in Sri Perambudur, we see Ramanuja's Tanuganda Tirumeni, which was consecrated by his Sishyas in his own birthplace. Ramanuja Seshasaila Shringe. May he eternally reside in Tirumala. Even today, we can take his darshana of Ramanuja when we go to Tirumala. I don't know how many of us, after finishing the darshana of Srinivasa, I think we are so tired that we hurry to come out. We miss out on the treasures of Tirumala temple. In fact, one day is not enough, 2 days are not enough, 3 days are not enough. The whole of, there is a beautiful work called Sri Venkatesha Itihasa Mala, which is composed by none other than Anantalva. Now, if we have that as a reference, we can possibly, all of us can go on a 5-day yatra to Tirumala. Because there are 5 days, or even 5 days are not enough, because there's so much to actually see. We all think Tirumala means Srinivasa and nothing more, nothing less, without even knowing it is actually Adivaraha Kshetra. A lot of people don't even visit Adivaraha. No one possibly even knows there is a beautiful Sannidhi for Jagadacharya Swami Ramanuja right next inside the Prahara itself, even today. And who established, who consecrated it? Anantalva. And the beauty of this Swami Ramanuja in Tirumala is he has Chinhasta Mudra, because he is basically in the posture of giving Vyakhyana, because it is here that he presented the Vedartha Sangraha. Therefore, he has Chin Mudra, Vyakhyana Hasta, and his other Hasta is like holding a book, because this is where he clarified, reconciled all the apparent contradictions and conflicts in the Vedas and the Vedanta, and started his journey of integrating all the philosophies. Therefore, even today, when we go to Tirumala, we must not miss Jaya Ramanuja Srishaila Sringe. Jaya Ramanuja Srishaila Sringe. May he eternally reside on the sacred land of Tirumala. Jaya Ramanuja Rangadhamni Nityam. Jaya Ramanuja Srishaila Sringe. Jaya Ramanuja Hastidhamni Nityam. Jaya Ramanuja Yadavadri Shringe. Sarvam Shri Krishna Arpanamastu.